In our last video, we talked about a scientific approach to personality typing. We explained how we get objective data to escape our subjective minds. But what is it that we actually track?
Well, we apply our objective method of typing independently to track subjective emotional states. Yes, that's the weird joke at the core of the system. We try to observe and agree on the emotional viewpoints of the people we type. More specifically, we ask, what does someone frame as positive and what does someone frame as negative? What are their consistent emotional patterns? We call the emotional states we're looking for saviors and demons.
That's what the game of typing is all about, recognizing when someone is in a savior state and when someone is in a demon state. Everything we track comes in the form of a binary coin. The binary coin describes a spectrum and the two sides of the coin at each end. One side is the savior and the other side is the demon.
It's not merely that one side is preferred over the other, but for every coin, one side is regarded as a default positive, while the other side is framed as the default negative. This is the key insight to tracking people's personalities objectively, looking for saviors and demons, default positives and default negatives.
For example, one of the binary coins that we're tracking is organize and gather. It's important to keep in mind that everybody does everything. Everybody gathers and everybody organizes, but what is important is how are they doing it?
Everybody has the default tendency to regard organize either as the savior or the demon, and regard gather as the opposite. This subjective view informs how they gather and how they organize.
A positive view of organize would be order or structure, while a negative one would be control. The positive one for gather would be variety, while the negative one would be chaos. We try to figure out which is which. We don't simply take someone's words at face value. We instead look for consistent patterns of behavior. Recognizing these patterns of behavior is a very tricky and nuanced thing.
A savior is what someone regards as their obvious responsibility. It's their obligation and what they see as given. It's what they automatically do. It's not what they merely talk about, it's what they actually do. But they might not even be aware of it because it's so automatic. And they might even claim that they don't like it if you ask them directly. But it's also what they consistently overdo. All recurring problems come from overdoing your saviors. It's what they literally frame as a savior for their personal lives and the world at large. You know what we need? More order.
Demons are the opposite. It's what people blame and avoid doing by default. It's what they need to force themselves to do, and then when they do it, they do it very awkwardly. It's what they don't regard as the obvious responsibility, or just flat out say it's not their responsibility. It's a void they leave for others to take care of. All their reoccurring problems come from neglecting their demons. It's what they frame as the bad guy. You know what's the problem? Too much control.
Recognizing saviors and demons is a very tricky subject. Saviors are usually done calmly, largely on autopilot. You often just do your saviors without bringing attention to them. Demons are the opposite. It's what you actually notice yourself doing because it takes so much effort. It triggers an emotional spike and wakes up your brain. You suddenly pay attention and you want others to pay attention too. You show off and present the difficult thing you did with pride. Difficult according to your subjective perception. That's what we call peacocking.
You end up mistaking this for the real you, but it's not actually what you're doing all day when you're not paying attention. It might be what you dream about and desire, and what you'd like to do someday. This is why it is impossible to type someone based on their word. You need to actually know their consistent patterns, because people don't see themselves and they peacock. But it's even more tricky when you have someone who already has a certain level of maturity and responsibility. They might not just claim to do their demons, they might actually be doing them. But still, when they talk about their demons, it's not the obvious responsibility, it is their discovery.
Learning to type is about recognizing someone else's saviors and demons, while you filter them through your own saviors and demons. You assume they view the world in the same way you do, but this is simply not true. You need to be able to see past that and recognize how others actually see the world.
If you want to learn objective typing, you need to become aware of your own default mindset. You need to use the objective process to set traps for your mind until you're able to learn to control it. It is ultimately a process of submission and ego death, and that's what we're still struggling with.
In the upcoming videos, we'll explain the binary coins one by one, introduce the common terminology, and describe what saviors and demons look like for the individual coins.